Hi, this is Neil Bolger, A2 Efficiency, and in this EnergyPlus overview video, we're going to talk about output variables and meters and how to add them quickly to your model for results viewing or troubleshooting or whatever you might need. So in this video, we're going to look at how to add output variables and meters. Then we're going to jump back and look at how would you actually find a list of the potential output points you could even add. And then we'll look at how you would do that in a few ways, from the IDF editor to just a fast addition from a text editor. So why would you do this, right? So here in a model, I had output not just cooling energy and heating. I had also output a specific point in my system to try and understand if the dew point was following my requirements, right? So up above, I'm showing the dry bulb temperature staying between 68 and 72. And then the dew point staying between 58 and 44. So trying to make sure I'm maintaining a level that I was aiming for in my controller. But I was having a bunch of problems. So I needed to output these data points to make sure I could zoom in and say, like, well, when it's occupied, what's going on, right? Is the humidifier on? Is it not? So on and so forth. So anyways, without actually trying to troubleshoot this model, how did I get these, right? So how did I add these in my model? So the way, let's first look at output variables and meters in EnergyPlus. And so these objects are located at the very bottom of the list, right? Output variable dictionary, but we're really looking for variables. And the variables are the more wild ones, right? So we have a wild meaning you would have one for every node or every zone or every wall if you outputted a wall condition. But generically, each one is here an object. You can see all the ones I've added. And then meters are below that. So meters are usually things like all the electricity or even the thermal load is a meter. And you can output, I expanded my list here. So you can see output variables, output meters, output meter file only. There is a bit of a difference. One will go into a larger data file. One will only go into a table CSV file. But if you look at output meters, right, this is things like general lighting or all the electricity, things you would think of. But there are other meters too. And actually, so I'm not going to hit save. So right now I have things like electricity, interior lighting, cooling energy, cooling electricity. And there's a bunch of other meters we could look at. But if you actually notice, right, when I hit new at the end, there's nothing here. It's blank, right? So obviously if I knew pumps, electricity, I could just type that in, pumps, and it would work because it's a generic name for any pump, the electricity use. But variables are a little more tricky, right? Site, outdoor air, dry bulb, temperature, dry bulb, one word. You might know that, but you may not know that zone mean air temperature is an output variable. So how would you find that? How would you know that you could write that down and it would work? Well, that's where we kind of get to the next step, which is the list of output files. So the list of potential output points. So EnergyPlus is interesting where if once you run a model once, and you could even just run it for an hour, right? You could change it to say January 1st to January 1st, and this would still work. It will scan the file and it will say, there is a list of variables you could generate results for, an RDD file. And this is this long list. So every model will have things like site, outdoor, dry bulb. But if we scroll way down the list, it starts to get more specific with zone mechanical ventilation or air system mechanical ventilation. So it knows, it looked at my model and said, hey, you have a DX heating coil object. You want to put an output variable to that? And the reason it works this way is because there's too many potential output variables, depending on the different sets of configurations you would use, that you really need to run the model first to see like what points do you even have access to. And so the way you actually read this object is you say it's an output variable, comma, any instance you find asterisk of this output data stream, and then give me the results on an hourly basis. So instead of hourly, you could do times step. And we could even see that here in the editor. Time step, or daily, or monthly if you wanted to. So you could change it, but by default, that list is in hourly. So those are variable files. And I came in here and found output node, and then I went in my model and found what's the name of the node. Because I didn't want to output all the hundreds of nodes. I wanted to change the asterisks to say node 35. And on the meter file, there's a similar file that will generate called an MDD file. And here there's actually a lot of meters because you can output specific information for a zone. But most of the time you're looking for things like electric building electricity. There is some interesting ones in here I should note about like thermal energy if you do want to output that. There's even cumulative meters. But regardless, the MDD file is your meter file. So that's where files are. So right, you'd run your model for even an hour, and it would generate those two lists that you would then use. And I'll actually show you if you did generate it, and you do then come open an EnergyPlus model that has the RDD and the MDD created. When you go to do this, and you now click this drop down, the list is populated. So if you don't even want to type it in, you could just run it once, then come back in here, then click zone outdoor air temperature. And you could do everything in the IDF editor if that makes you more comfortable. And I delete that one. Okay, but the other way to add it would be to add it in a text editor. So I'm going to open my IDF file here. So this is the EnergyPlus file. And then here is my RDD output variables, right? So I could add pump shaft power, and I could just copy that line. And here I could just paste it anywhere between objects. It doesn't have to be at the bottom or the top, as long as it's not in the middle of this object, which is closed here with the semicolon, it will work. So that could be another way to very quickly add objects to your model for outputs if you need to add a bunch very quick, like that. All right, so I just added all those. I'm going to delete them because I don't really want them, but just to show you that's the way. And you can go see the ones that are already in here. They're at the bottom of the list. I'm going to go down and then scroll back. Where are they? Output variable. So here it's actually not, you can see each comma is on its own line. Asterisk, star, site outdoor air dry bulb temperature, comma, hourly data. And so that comes out. Now that I told it I want that, it even put it in a CSV here. I was viewing the SQL file, but the data also comes out in a CSV file. So here it is. It's actually giving me the design day first, which there is a way to disable this. So, but right now it's a little annoying. It's basically 24 hours of the first design day, the second design day, and then the calendar year starts at 50 here. So always look at your timestamps. But basically you can see here are those data points I asked for in the output results. And they're both in a CSV file for variables. They're in one called meters for the meters. And then both of those are actually in the SQL file as well as this ESO file. Both are basically different like database file types. I had been visualizing the SQL file using dviewer when we checked that out. All right, that is output variables in a nutshell. Cheers.